we needed some help with the fuel pressure regulator installed. So in this video, I'm going to be covering that, and then we'll see how it goes from there. Okay, so from the last video, as you could see, there was quite a lot going on. My tappet cover gasket failed, spark plug wells was filled up with oil, and it's actually been quite a while from now. So in this video, well, the video that you will see now is actually footage I've taken from the weekend following. And then what I've basically done from that point is there's certain maintenance things and other things I've discovered, but in this video we're going to be focusing only on fueling. So just a rundown on parts. There's a couple of things that I had. I have a master turbo fuel pressure regulator. I had it sitting for like 2 years. Clean high pressure fuel line, which you can use for oil, brake fluid, all that, but in this case I'm doing that. Actual automotive fuel line clamps, because the normal hose clamps, in my experience, I've always stripped the stuff, even on the slightest turn. Different diameter fuel line as well, which I'll get to that later in the video. And then also fittings for the fuel pump, and I needed to get fittings for those, but I'll get into that later. Okay, so why I'm doing the fuel upgrade is the last time I was at the dyno, the tuner actually suggested that I scale up my fueling. So in other words, you can change the duty cycle on the injectors or how much fuel to dispense, but it might not be atomizing properly. So if I want to go turbo, which I would love to do, and a couple of other things, it's all going to rely down on how well I can atomize the air as well. So that is the whole reason behind this. So first things first that we're going to do is we're going to take off our intake manifold. So the reason for this is, you'll see on some of the footage that I have, there's actually battery wires from the battery to the starter that actually has a bit of exposed metal, and when I was busy rewiring my starter, there was actually some arcing that went between the fuel rail and the battery positive. So for the safety of this, I would highly recommend taking your intake manifold off rather than trying to work on it in the car. Okay, so I took these two bolts that I had holding the fuel rail in at those points. Our base bet is gonna be to take off the intake manifold, but I really don't want to. Also, by the way, those repairs in the catch can that I had worked really well up until the engine decided to not catch oil. Okay, so as you've seen from some of the footage where I was explaining what I needed to do, I know some of you are trying to figure out, why didn't I just get something like a fuel pressure regulator delete plug, which is over here, and why I chose the drill mine instead. So after spending a good couple of months, in fact probably like around 2 years, trying to find places to actually make this stuff up, because my aim was to actually sell these things. It's something I couldn't find this side of the world, so I wanted to have it made up. But the closer I was looking at it, the more that I actually found that it's exactly the same like your full fuel pressure regulator. So as long as I got a drill bit that was wider than the stem or the same diameter, I can put it in a drill press and basically drill it all the way down, flush up until it's flat like the delete plug would be. So that's what I did. Took that whole bunch of compressed air to blow off any shavings, and even with the fuel rail itself, before I even did any assembly, blew it up as well. Okay, so there's the intake manifold. I grinded down all the edges of these supports, I think you call it, that does that. Also, as fuel regulator, I actually drilled out the stem that's in here, cleaned it out with compressed air. Alright, so there's the injectors. I thought about to get them on the fuel rail, but there you go. Still need to sort out these pipes, but yeah. Okay, so here we go. As you can see, all the oil there, that's a problem. But why are you not focusing? Fuel rail is in. Injectors were a bit of a struggle, but it was actually just that retainer clips more than anything. And then the pipe stuck out under here. So as you can see, fuel pipes in. So now it's actually just to let it soften up for about a minute and then put it on. Okay, so as I've explained now in the hot water trick, basically you soften up your fuel lines with boiling hot water. But I did struggle for a good bit later that evening, and my phone actually stopped recording midway through because I was actually just trying to take it in one shot. So I actually ended up having to put some Vaseline on the edges, because if you see on the fuel lines itself, there's quite a lip, and that's actually meant for clips. But I actually used the fuel line directly over that with that high strength fuel clamp. So the Vaseline, as it heats, it makes like a grease, so it can actually slip over that lip on its own, and basically that's what happened. So after all that, I also went to replace the fuel lines of the lift pump or the in-tank pump, and that is also clay nose, fuel line clamps. I checked the cabling on that as well, because a lot of the times people think the fuel pump could go bad or anything like that, but in essence it's actually just the wires wiggle itself loose over time. Okay, so after the installation of the fuel lines, the next thing I did was, it was way too dark, so this phone couldn't capture anything. But I reinstalled the intake manifold with a new fuel rail and fuel lines. So I actually put fuel lines over both of the fittings, and then I took a piece of string to work out more or less what length I'd need, and then cut it down and set it to the clamps and everything. Yeah. All those oil stains. So last night I came back, was able to do the first start. There's a couple of things you'll see now. Body's got this all from me off his head. But there's a fuel rail in. Finally there's clear there for the starter cables, and here's the regulator. I was just doing testing with this extended wires and down to the fuel filter, but yeah, it works. There is a leak coming from here, but I was told Loctite actually works really well in sealing up high pressure fittings. And then I'm thinking of blocking this off and maybe running something else to catch gap. But there's another video on this where you'll see how I had to fix a problem that shouldn't have been there. And then I just need to make the brackets to keep them on this hardware. So yeah, but overall it works. Everything was basically installed, and I basically just set the fuel pressure. So took the, let's see, I actually still got it here. So this Allen key, you actually use that to turn the screw on the top of the regulator to adjust the pressure. But from what I read up, you actually set your fuel pressure on prime. But when I actually went to the dyno, the tuner actually did it with the car idling. So make sure you do your research on that, and you can actually set your fuel pressure that way. But later on in that night, all I did was did everything, did the prime, that's it. So at this point, you pretty much can run it if you have an in-tank pump or anything, but I'm going to be running dual fuel pumps. So at this point, I actually prepped a Caravel pump. I saw online that the Caravel pump is actually loosely modeled after the Bosch 044 pumps, and that uses AN fittings. So I spent a good week just trying to find AN fittings for the car, and that I couldn't find. only to find out with the caravel pumps that Goldwagen sells, they actually don't use AN fittings, they actually use Imperial fittings. So I actually went to get a adapter thread, so it converts it from the Imperial fitting with the washer, and then it has a NPT thread that I could use, like a hose bob on me. And I did that with a bit of thread tape, not on the inside, just on the edges to help seal it up under the compression. And then for the inlet to the pump, which comes from the existing in-tank pump back here and through the lines, I could only find a nylon reducing in the size. And the people that sold was actually from an automotive place, and they said, look, nylon can work with fuel fittings, but in the future I'm actually going to upgrade it to a steel fitting. Okay, so under the bottom of here, where these fuel lines are, I'm actually going to move the fuel filter to the back over there, and then put the high pressure pump here, because there's already a high pressure line and filtered fuel only feeding to the pump. It just makes sense, because then there's ground lines there also as well, and battery positives to connect up or whatever. Okay, so in the video with a little bit of where I showed how I was planning on routing and stuff. Now take note, this is a 6-bar pump that you're putting in your engine bay. In my case, I did it because I knew I was using the right fittings and the right hose. And I made sure for a good day of leaving the car on idling, like either half a tank that I idled out, just to make sure there's no leaks. From the point onwards, there was a couple things I had to do. So I had a leak on the fuel pressure regulator, and that was actually on the hose bobs that screw into the regulator itself. Someone told me that Loctite actually works on sealing it up, but I couldn't find my Loctite, so I actually just used thread tape again. That's suitable for fuel fittings. And I placed it on the return and the actual pressure supply. And then once that was up, the main system was okay. Now it just actually came to finding the direction or what pipes I need to replace where, and how I'm going to do the relocation. Okay, so how I found the routing to work on how to replace the fuel filter, and the reason I actually did that between the caravel pump and the in-tank pump is the caravel pump actually has a strainer that's supposed to be in there. And in my case, I actually lost the strainer, so I thought, okay, filtered fuel has to be clean enough to go through something like that. So it's better I filter it before it gets to the pump and cycle it enough before it goes like a daily thing. So how I found the direction was I actually looked where the fuel filter was in the engine bay, like I showed in the footage, and I traced from the rubber line all the way through to the steel line, and I marked off which one. And then there's two fuel lines that actually sits. So you have your fuel tank. I'll see if I can do it on the diagram. You have your fuel tank, you have your two lines. I marked off which one was actually the pressurized line where I need to put the filter, and then the return line. And then it was just so simple of taking yours off, putting yours on with clamps, and send it back up to the tank. When I did my wiring, so I used the chassis ground and the positive to the fuel pump. I would recommend running it on a relay, so single pole double throw, so you can have two fuel pumps each on their own lines, and then you have your dictator or your normal EC or whatever actually triggering the relay to run all. But I actually just put both onto the dictator one, and it's been fine so far. And that's about it really. Just a disclaimer again, this is what I've done, it's my experience. Your experience may vary. This is just how I found what works for me, And if you can understand it a bit better, I hope this video was helpful. And for you guys, I'm actually thinking of trying to start up a online store, or even something like a WhatsApp or Telegram group, where if you're looking to source some parts and parts is not necessarily available, like in this case, I'd want to actually start off with fuel line fittings and fuel line itself. I'm actually considering catering to Cape Town or even the entire South Africa using the courier guy PUDO box, the pickup drop off. Because I've actually been using that for Facebook Marketplace, buying parts or selling parts and so on. And it's fairly simple. You request a part to be like, okay, I'm looking for so and so, place your order, you can do a deposit, I get your parts, I send you the tracking information, and then we go from there. Let me know in the comment section down below if you guys actually want that, and maybe we can work something, because I'm also going to be in need of parts pretty soon. There's a lot of projects I need to do, and there's still quite a lot coming out, but for now I'm actually trying to make sure I can fund these things. That's the fuel system upgrades that I did in a nutshell. I would highly recommend you speak to someone who has a fuel pressure regulator in the car, or even ask a tuner, what should you set your fuel pressure to in order to safely run such a setup. And thank you guys so much for watching. I have noticed growth in the channel since the last video as well, and my shorts have slowly started increasing, and that was just in the dyno video coming up. But in the next video, I'm going to be reviewing the D1 spec oil catch cans, because there's a lot of misinformation about it here locally as well as online. So I'll share with you guys how I came across it, what my experience was, and what I did, and we can take it from there. It is a bit of an idea I'm playing with around over there, but we'll see as this video progresses how it goes on. Seeing yourself on camera and hearing your voice is a weird thing.